Translated from Italian, the phrase perché no means why not. This saying presented itself to me countless times during my experience of living abroad with the ACM London Florence program. Perché no was not only the name of my favorite gelato shop in Florence, but it was also a sort of mantra, a statement to take every opportunity that was presented to me and make the most of my study abroad experience. Studying abroad forced me to let down all of my boundaries, fears, and concerns. If I had stayed in America, somewhere where I was comfortable and aware, I would have never been able to experience personal growth like I did overseas. With each day, I didn't let my boundaries or fears get in my way. Instead of asking myself why, I asked myself, why not? Why shouldn't I experience something new and groundbreaking, something like I had never experienced before? For example, why not try on a pair of shoes in the most fabulous fancy Louis Vuitton store in Florence? Why not ask for directions? Why not eat gelato not once but twice a day? This personal growth started from day one. One of the biggest personal challenges was actually getting to Florence. I had never flown abroad by myself, and I was very nervous for my connections, getting through customs, and figuring out London Gatwick at 6 a.m. My first taste of Italy was on my flight from London to Florence. Almost everyone on the flight was Italian. They were beautiful, stoic, and serene. I quickly realized that fashion, style, and confidence were a huge part of Italian culture. And since studying abroad, I feel as though my own sense of style has progressed thanks to this Italian inspiration. Completing my journey to Florence and arriving at the Pensione, I feel as though a huge weight had been taken off of my shoulders. I had already had a huge accomplishment, and it was only day one. My first days in Florence were filled with situations that forced me to think on my feet. For instance, on the very first night that my roommate and myself had moved into our host family's house, we got stuck on the bus home. For about 2 hours, we were circling the city, and of course, since it was January, it was dark outside, and so we didn't know which stop was ours to get us home. All we knew was that we were supposed to be on the number 4 bus, which we were. Finally, we made a decision just to get off at the next stop. We would try to ask for directions in the 2 or 3 words of Italian that we knew, and attempt to get home to Ursula in time for dinner. Luck was on our side, because once we got off, I approached 2 younger, friendly-looking men. "Scusi," I said. The young man turned to me and responded, "Oh, I'm sorry, we don't speak Italian, we're American." I will never forget my enthusiasm and gratitude when I just said, "Oh my gosh, I love you." As it turned out, these 2 young men were missionaries working in Florence. They had been there longer than we had, so they helped us get on the right bus home and made sure we got home to Ursula in time for dinner. Dinner at my host mom's house that night was seriously one of the most delicious meals that I've ever had in my entire life. She made ricotta pasta, which she later made for my birthday party. The most humorous part was that later that week, in downtown Florence, near the church or San Michele, I ran into our missionary friends again. I will never forget this experience of our first night, nor my roommate, Michelle, who I immediately bonded with after this experience. From this day forward, my experiences continued. Luckily, I now knew which bus stop was mine to get me home safely to 44 R Lambruschini, but adventures like this were commonplace during my time abroad. Whether it was hopping on a train to spend the weekend in the beautiful coastal towns of Cinque Terre, or attending a Fiorentina soccer game, I was growing progressively and was constantly faced with questions like, why not take a train to Prato, a train to Bologna, and a bus to a small town just to visit the Lamborghini factory? Why not push my way onto a crowded regional train headed to Naples, even if there weren't any seats left, so I would have to sit on the floor? Academics were another area where I feel like I expanded my boundaries while I was abroad. Taking classes overseas was nothing like taking classes in the States. But my professors, especially both visiting professors, Ripon's own Diane Mockridge, who was the first person who inspired me to go on the London Florence program, and in London, Rick Millett, who we were lucky enough to hear from last night, both inspired me in my academics while I was abroad. While learning about the Medici or Michelangelo in Florence, I actually got to see where these people lived and thrived. The world became my classroom. Great galleries like the Uffizi were my backyard. Under the shadow of Brunelleschi's dome, I could read Dante's On World Government or delve into Machiavelli. Why not? Learn how to use a map. Before going abroad, I could not navigate to save my life, but after just a few weeks in Florence and later London, my pocket maps became my best friend. I could navigate the tiny Florence streets to find my favorite store or the palace where we had class that day. Once in London, I became a pro at figuring out the quickest and fastest way to use any destination using the tube. With my Oyster card in one hand and my tube map in the other, I scurried through the London Underground like a London native. And if I got off at the wrong stop, why not take a trip to the surface of London and see what I could discover? Once in London, I was faced with more why not situations, like, why not take an evening stroll to the Thames? Or why not camp out in Covent Garden like a true London native? Why not let yourself grow and become more independent? Some of the most rewarding days in London were those afternoons where I was just spontaneous and headed out into the city. One such experience was during the festival of St. George's Day. This took place in Trafalgar Square, and the entire episode of St. George and the Dragon was acted out. Trafalgar Square quickly became one of my favorite places in London. Why not live like a local? Every evening, I would pick up my free Evening Standard newspaper. It became a daily routine to look for the man with the bright orange vest handing out the paper. Reading the London news became second nature. I would also delve into publications like Time Out London to see exactly what was going on each weekend in town. Why not live like a tourist? Even though I had my favorite coffee shop in London, which, in case you're wondering, it's Double Shot Coffee in Covent Garden, that doesn't mean that I didn't experience the London of a tourist. Of course, I flew the London Eye to get a bird's eye view of the city. I hopped on a bus to Stonehenge. I posed inside a famous London phone booth and, of course, strolled across Abbey Road. Before I left the States, I honestly didn't know if studying abroad was something that I was mentally or emotionally ready for, but it turns out that I was. My experience and the choice to see the world reminded me of a quote by St. Augustine. "The world is a great book. He who never stirs from home reads only a single page." After studying abroad, I truly feel like I know what this quote means. And if you ask me today whether I want to go back to Europe and revisit these two fabulous cities, I, of course, would respond with a strong, resounding, why not?